All week I've been struck with this one sentence in the section from Paul's letter to the Romans. For the person who loves another has fulfilled the law. I've been thinking of it partly in terms of the context of my homilies for the last few weekends. Remember, it started with Paul, oh, how deep is the knowledge and wisdom of God, how inscrutable his ways. And I talked about how God was just not kind of different than humans, but other, completely other. And it reminded you of Isaiah chapter 55, where God says, my ways are not your ways. As high as heaven is above the earth, so are my ways above your ways. And so to begin to understand God, we have to think not like human beings. You remember when Jesus pulls Peter, after he tells his disciples that he's going to go up to Jerusalem and have to suffer and die by the hands of the chief priests and the scribes. Peter remonstrates with him. Says, Lord, God forbid that anything like that happen to you. And Jesus says to him, get behind me, Satan. You're not thinking as God thinks, but you're thinking as human beings think. So we have to let our thinking be changed by the Gospels and begin to think as God thinks, begin to value the things that God values. And today Paul mentions the law. And we have to think about how we Americans view law in these days. We have an ambivalence about the law. We say we're a society built on the rule of law, but we chafe under rules and regulations and laws. And we see that they are often used badly or even made badly. But even more important than that, think about the purpose of human laws. We can name a lot of things. You know, laws protect us from ourselves. They protect us from others or others from us. They enable society to function well. I mean, there are good reasons for human laws. But those aren't the purpose of God's laws. The person who loves another has fulfilled the law. And so the purpose of God's laws are to bring us to love either God or our neighbor. So that's the first thing we really have to get in our heads, that we have to come to realize that the purpose of human laws and the purpose of God's laws are different. And so for whatever reasons we're ambivalent about human laws, we have to put that aside when we approach God's laws. And as the week went on, my focus got even smaller to just the phrase, has fulfilled the law. And notice, Paul doesn't say the person who loves has obeyed the law, right? Fulfilling is a step beyond obeying. And that was the Pharisees' mistake. They were intent on obeying the law, even to the smallest prescriptions. But they stopped there. They missed the purpose of the law. See, law is not its own purpose. Law brings us somewhere. And so I was thinking the equivalent today to the Pharisees would be Catholic conservatives. They're so focused on the letter of the law that they exclude the fulfillment of the law. And Jesus would say to them, as he said to his disciples about the Pharisees, this from Matthew, for I tell you, Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Unless you go beyond just obeying the law to fulfilling the law, you will not enter into heaven. Liberal Catholics also make a mistake regarding God's commandments, God's law, and church law, but they make the opposite mistake. They're so focused on, they claim the spirit of the law that they bypass its letter. Now, let me make sure I'm not talking about, I'm talking about true liberals here. I'm not talking about people who just don't want to obey the law. I'm not talking about people who are just disobedient because they don't like what the law says to do. That's a whole other category. I'm talking about people, either liberal or conservative, who are trying to live to please God. They think they are doing the right thing. And so to the liberals, Jesus makes this statement also from Matthew. Think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. See, God's law is not its own purpose. And so we say to the conservatives, you can't just obey the law, the prescriptions of the law, and stop. But we cannot get to where the law wants to take us unless we follow and obey the law. And that's said to the liberals. So liberals and conservatives both get it wrong concerning God's commandments and the church laws that are meant to support them. And I might put it this way. Liberals try to fulfill the law without obeying it. Conservatives obey the law without fulfilling it. By the way, notice some of the characteristics of these two camps, the two people in these two camps. And I want to be clear with you. I'm not trying to make a snide comment. I'm not judging. Right? I'm not laughing or condemning. I'm trying to describe so that you don't fall into either category. But conservatives are often grumpy, judgmental, lifeless, and unattractive. And liberals seem more attractive at first, and they seem more lively probably and open-minded, but they end up in heresy or teaching a watered-down faith. And if you talk to either long enough, you realize that they are both arrogant. Liberals because they think they're above the law and they're smarter than the church, and conservatives because they think they're holier than everybody else. What is the purpose of God's law? To bring us to love. The one who loves another has fulfilled the law. Let me read you something from Jeremiah. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. I will put my law within them, and I will write it upon their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Any married couples here who have been here since I've been here, and whom I've prepared for marriage, know that one of my first meetings with them, I talk about the difference between covenant and contract. The Lord doesn't say, I will make a new contract with the house of Israel. That's business language. If you do this, I'll do this. God's language with his people is covenant language. Covenant language is love language. It's relationship language. God will put his law in our hearts, not just in our minds, but in our hearts, so that we may come to love him as he loves us. Now, who's our motto in this? Of course, it's Christ. I ran across this from St. Andrew of Crete. The fulfillment of the law is Christ himself, who does not lead us away from the letter as lift us up to its spirit. For the law's consummation was this, that the very lawgiver, Jesus, accomplished his work and changed letter into spirit by living the letter, right? Summing everything up in himself, and those subject to the law living by grace. Subject to the law, but living by grace. So what should we be if we're not liberal or conservative? So in the past few years, another word has come up. People have trying to be free of those two dichotomies have come up with the word orthodox. And I know what they mean, but people who say they're orthodox are trying to say, I just try to be faithful to the church. And that's fine. To my ears, even orthodox has a whiff of righteousness through obedience. It's still in that conversation, right? So what should we say? First of all, I'm not sure there is a term, right? So I'll put it this way. I'll offer this as a way out of that whole conversation. That I seek to learn through the laws of God and the church to love God with all my heart, with all my soul, and all my mind. And I seek to love through obedience to the law of God and his church, to love my neighbor as myself.